would you celebrate me?
Because you're out fourth.
Just in time for first period.
It seems like the 90s are doing a bit of comeback with this movie and the X-Files revival and stuff like that. What are your favorite movies and TV shows from the 90s?
Oh gosh. Well, I was making a lot of TV. I wasn't watching that much.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Oh my God. Everything Sarah Michelle Gellar did in the 90s was my favorite. I loved how many times she was a murder victim. And I loved her being a woman that was just rocking television, fashion, and killing vampires, saving the world.
Hocus Pocus, I just rewatched, and it's also getting a remake or sequel, and it's just iconic. Bette Midler's like, I would die for her.
I love Daria, the MTV cartoon. That was really another sort of amazing rebel girl vehicle.
Okay, so High Fidelity, the movie I love, and also Clueless, I think I've seen maybe 50 times. That was just like such a staple in high school. And honestly, Clueless like introduced me to the 90s genre, basically. So
for me, I didn't know too many like chick flicks or like horror movies from the 90s, but I definitely loved like Juice with like Tupac. That's like my 90s movie style. I love that era. Or like Poetic Justice.
I loved Larry Sanders, my buddy Gary Shandling shows, one of my favorites of all time. I remember I liked to watch Dr. Katz, which was a cartoon.
I mean, I was a big original 90210 fan, and I have to say that my mom, who is like a hardcore second wave feminist, it hurt her so badly that I loved that show. She was like, what have I done wrong? And she would sit next to me as I watched it and like just critique every, problematic representation of young women that she could find on screen.
That's all I can remember watching, because back in those days, I was shooting in Vancouver. I'd get like video cassettes of these shows. So it was hard to, if you weren't there in your seat at the time that the show was playing, it was hard to get it.
No one is mentioning the X-Files. With David Duchovny in the cast, you have to mention the X-Files.
And X-Files, yes. How could I?
X-Files. Mulder. Love.
I love the X-Files. That was coming. I love the X-Files. And so working with David was truly like such a dream, because I've just been a fan of his for so long. And he's such a lovely person. That's always a really nice thing to realize that your icons are also good people.
She's right. The number one rule of the craft: if a person is a danger to herself or others, they will be bound.
If the 90s are doing a comeback, what did you want to see coming back from the 90s, and what should stay in the 90s?
I don't know, man.
Oh gosh. Well, we've come a long way from the 90s, even though we still have a long way to go. I think in terms of representation, both on screen and off screen, we should leave that in the 90s. I think, the more diversity and equity and inclusion that we can be prioritizing as storytellers, the better.
The women power, like the funky, spunky fashion that women and men and everyone brought, definitely that. And also just, the bravery that I feel like the 90s had. There was so many people just doing their own thing and being creative.
I feel like the 90s fashion has made a huge comeback. So I would have to say like the music, even the bad pop music from the 90s, like I still love. Punk music, punk rock, that like grungy rock, like bring that back. Like, I want
Maybe low-rise jeans can stay in the 90s.
Low rise?
Weren't those more like a 2000s thing?
Were they?
I think so. Paris.
Like the thong sticking out?
That was late 90s, yeah.
Oh yeah, that was late 90s. The whale tails.
I like the door knocker earrings. We can keep those. We can bring those back. Love that with some gloss.
Low-key kind of want to bring back the thin eyebrows.
What?
Whoa.
No.
Wow.
No, stay bye
Purple
bye.
ones.
Away from me.
I listen, I love a choker. You know, like I love 90s fashion is everything to me. And it's coming back with like a hardcore vengeance. So it's kind of perfect timing that we're all dipping back in to those aesthetics. And we played with some of those aesthetics in the film too.
You know, if you can find a way to make stuff relevant, then by all means reboot it. And you know what I liked about trying to bring the X-Files back a couple of years ago was I always thought the X-Files was kind of a natural in any era because it was really about hope and wonder and the unknown. You know, if there are other shows that are more specifically tied to the zeitgeist of the 90s, like you know, political shows, it's hard to bring back a political show that's tied to an era, but you know.
Yeah, the 90s were a good era culture-wise, I feel like.
Be careful, a lot of weirdos out here.
We are the weirdos, mister.